The Seattle Storm have won 8 of its last 9 games, and the next Seattle Storm beat writer Bella Valeriano Munson is here to chat all about the team's first month of the season, Jewell Loyd being named to Team USA as part of the 5-on-5 team, Ezi Magbegor's contract extension, what's ahead for Seattle, and more. Locked On Women's Basketball starts now.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and happy Friday. You are locked on to women's basketball. I'm Natalie Heverin, and I'm a features writer and the Atlantic 10 beat reporter for The Next. Thanks for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day. And remember, Locked On Women's Basketball is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code, all lowercase, LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. If this is your first time listening to Locked On Women's Basketball, thank you. And we at The Next have over 100 reported pieces every single month. We have a beat reporter on every single WNBA team, one on more than 15 different NCAA beats. So get that YouTube subscription up. And you can also support us by subscribing to The Next, $9 a month, $72 a year at thenexthoops.com. Today, we'll be talking all about the first month of the season for the Seattle Storm, Jewell Loyd heading to her second straight Olympics for Team USA, Ezi Magbegor's contract extension, what's ahead for Seattle, and more. Joining me today is Bella Valeriano Munson, who covers the Seattle Storm for The Next. First off, thank you for joining me today, Bella. And, just starting off, last night the Storm improved to 9-4. Did anything stand out to you about that game?
Yeah, I think a couple of different things stood out to me about that game. Obviously, it's always fun to watch Jewell Loyd and Arike Ogunbowale battle it out. Those are two fantastic scorers and defenders. But I think the biggest thing for Seattle was that it was really a team performance. All 8 players who saw the floor scored. 7 of them had 2 or more assists. The only player who didn't have an assist was Mercedes Russell. Nneka Ogwumike had 17 points. Ezi Magbegor had a 10-10 double-double. Skylar added 21 points. Jewell Loyd, 19 points. And Jordan Horston added another 10 points. And, that really came from the ball movement, which is a really big thing for Seattle in their offense. They assisted on 26 of their 36 made field goals. And 3 players had more than 5 assists in Skylar, Diggins-Smith, Jewell Loyd, and Sammy Whitcomb. And, that's something they've really been focusing on as a pretty new team, getting to play together and figure each other out. So the more they can assist each other and the more everyone is scoring, I think the better it is for them overall. And then I think the other big thing for them was forcing turnovers and scoring off of those turnovers. Seattle really want to lead with their defense and have that cause their offense, essentially. And even though they had 13 of their own turnovers and Dallas scored 16 points off of those, they forced the Wings into 19 turnovers and scored 27 points off of those turnovers. They want to push in transition. They want to get those baskets before the defense is set, and they really managed to do that against Dallas.
Awesome. And you mentioned that a lot of players are scoring. 4 players are averaging in double figures this season. How has that scoring variety helped the team so far?
Yeah, I think it seems simple, but it just makes them harder to guard. Last year, Jewell Loyd led the league in scoring, but she was getting double and triple teamed regularly. And rarely did other players really step up with enough points to make up for whatever they lost if Jewell wasn't able to get off as many shots. And not having so much of that burden be on Jewell Loyd just makes it so that they can win games. If you're relying on one player all the time, if that player gets stopped, it's really, really hard to do anything. And with Jewell now being able to operate within an offense and get some open shots, she can score more and score more efficiently while opening things up for her teammates. And so her shot making ability can become not just something that gets herself points, but her teammates points. And I think it's made a huge difference.
And then the Storm started the season 1-3, but have lost just 1 game since May 20th. What has changed for them since then?
Another thing I think that seems really simple, but it's really time to develop chemistry on and off the court. Obviously, you're bringing in 2 brand new starters, 3 actually, if you count Victoria Vivian's, but, 2 really important starters in Nneka Ogwumike and Skylar Diggins-Smith. And it doesn't, they're fantastic players, but that isn't going to come together immediately. As much as Jewell and Skylar and Nneka are all like best friends and have been for a long time, they haven't played much together. It's been nearly a decade since Skylar and Jewell played together at Notre Dame. And, neither of them really played with Nneka, except for maybe a little bit on the USA basketball team, depending on who was in and out at various times. But really, it's just been them getting to know each other. Noelle Quinn has talked a lot about it, who, different teammates getting to know where Nneka and Skylar want the ball, and Skylar, particularly as the point guard, getting to know where her teammates want the ball and where they're going to, be able to score. But, also I think what's been really important is Skylar getting back into her groove. Obviously, she came back from over 20 months of not playing basketball after, giving birth to her second child. And, she has been absolutely insanely good for someone coming back from giving birth to their second child. But it has taken a little bit of time for her to get used to being on the court again. And I think the assists were there from the very beginning, but her scoring touch wasn't necessarily there right at the beginning. And so I think about 4 or 5 games in, we saw Skylar really get her scoring touch back. And that has opened up a lot more of the floor as well, because they've got to guard her at the 3-point line. They've got to guard her when she drives. Those shots are falling, and she is going to score 21 points like she did last night if you don't stop her. So I think really it's, her getting back into a groove personally, and then also the team getting to know each other.
Awesome. Well, that's a perfect segue into what I wanted to talk about next, with 2 of the biggest free agents this year landing in Seattle, and Nneka Ogwumike and Skylar Diggins-Smith. Starting off with Nneka, what has she brought to the team this season?
I mean, I think the easier question would be, what hasn't she brought to this team? I mean, Nneka is, I've watched Nneka plenty before she played for Seattle, but it wasn't until I really paid attention to her play that I realized just how insanely talented she is. The shots she can get off, the space that she can create, the strength that she plays with despite being a bit undersized for her position. She's leading the league in field goal percentage right now with 59.2% shooting from the field. She's also shooting 46.7% from the 3. She's improved her 3-point shooting. She's spreading the floor for Seattle, another thing they want to do. She also, I think, brings a discipline to her and an effort that you really only get out of the best players and the most experienced players. And she has all of that, a former MVP, and, in her 12th year in the league, she really knows what she's doing. And so her effort on the floor, really, it can't be understated how important that is. I think Noelle Quinn talks about it a lot, that when her teammates see Nneka just getting on the boards and fighting on the defensive end and, getting on the floor for balls and really fighting and being really physical, that physicality especially was something Seattle struggled with last year. So I think on the floor in particular, her effort and her motor and her motivation is really important to get the whole team going. And then, she's just a brilliant player who can score like it's nobody's business. And, like I said before, you really can't underestimate how important it is to have multiple scoring threats. And, if Jewell Loyd is stopped and Ezi is stopped and Skylar is stopped, you can get the ball to Nneka and you're almost certainly going to get a bucket.
And then, I know you just talked about this a little bit, but what has Skylar brought to this team?
Yeah, I think, similarly, her effort and physicality on the floor really sets the tone for Seattle and how they're going to play. She leads the defense, and she's sort of that first agitator who's trying to get steals and get out and run. But she also, 5.8 assists per game, huge, 5th best in the league right now. And Seattle played point guard by committee for the most part last year. Point guard was the number one thing they wanted, and they got one of the best ones they possibly could, because not only can she find her teammates in really good spaces, but she's also another 3-level scorer, just like Jewell Loyd. She can knock down the incredibly high-arcing rainbow threes that we've seen throughout her career. She's got a solid mid-range shot, and she's really great at driving into the paint to either get her own bucket at the rim or to kick it out and get open shots for her teammates.
Awesome. Well, coming up next, we'll talk about Bella's recent stories on Jewell Loyd being named to the U.S. Olympic team for 5-on-5 and Ezi Magbegor's contract extension. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. When the NBA finals are over, the hoops action doesn't stop on PrizePicks. Women's basketball is just getting started. With young stars like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese looking to make names for themselves alongside greats like Breanna Stewart and A'ja Wilson, you could win up to 100 times your cash watching them ball out. PrizePicks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the PrizePicks community today. One thing that I love about PrizePicks is that it offers injury insurance so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured this playoff basketball season. If you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, PrizePicks will have your back and not count that as a loss. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. That's right, just download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less, it's that easy. Today's episode is brought to you by Apostrophe. I'm getting married this summer and I'm prioritizing my skincare to make sure I'm looking my best for my big day. With summer around the corner, it's a great time to get started with Apostrophe. Apostrophe is an online platform that connects you with an expert dermatology team to get you a customized acne treatment. Just fill out an online consultation about your skin goals and medical history, take a few selfies, and a dermatology provider will create a customized treatment plan for you. Apostrophe offers access to prescription treatments, both oral and topical medications for all types of acne. And I love the cute postcards that come in every box. We have a special deal for our audience. Get your first visit for only $5 at apostrophe.com/lockedon when you use our code LOCKEDON. That's a savings of $15. This code is only available to our listeners. To get started, just go to apostrophe.com/lockedon and click Get Started. Then use our code LOCKEDON at signup and you'll get your first visit for only $5. Thank you, Apostrophe, for sponsoring this episode. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Okay, so 2 days ago, you wrote about what Jewell Loyd brings to the Olympic team. So what does she bring?
I think she brings a lot of things to the Olympic team. I think the first thing you think about is her scoring. Obviously, she's a very talented scorer. I think what's really important about her within the USA basketball system is that she can play within a system and with other talented players. Obviously, she was kind of the third option behind Breanna Stewart and Sue Bird for several years of her career, majority of her career. And so she knows how to work within the system and get her bucket when she needs to get a bucket, but not take away focus from other players. And so you can set up and you can try and get her a buzzer-beating shot. She'll probably hit it, but you can also just give her the ball and say, go get a bucket, and she will go get a bucket. I also think that her defense and rebounding is really underrated. She's a really fantastic, active defender who really locks in on her schemes. 5'10", she's not the tallest guard, but she's got good size and she'll really get physical and go in and leap for rebounds. And I think she can bring a lot of things in terms of those things on the court, but also sort of less things that aren't in the stat sheet as much, I think, are her leadership and her confidence. She has a confidence in herself and what she's able to do, but also a confidence in her team and her teammates and what they're able to do, and the experience of what it takes to win a gold medal at Olympics, at a World Cup, a WNBA championship. They're all sort of related experiences where you need to really be calm and collected and know how to control yourself in those difficult moments if it's a close game. And I think she has so much of that with all the experience she has in her career, both in the WNBA and on the international level.
And then what was her role back in 2021 at the Tokyo Olympics, and what are you expecting her role to be on this year's team?
Yeah, back at the last Olympics, she averaged about 18 minutes per game off the bench. She would have 2 or 3 assists and rebounds per game and about 5 points per game. So it wasn't like she was necessarily a star player, but I think she was a really important contributor off the bench. And with USA basketball, there's so many talented players. It's really hard to say if she'll start or who might start over her. But I would expect her to play a similar amount of minutes, maybe even a little bit more, just because of her experience playing for USA basketball. But I think, she'll be an important player in tough games and close games to really be a veteran presence and someone who knows how to deal with the physicality of the international level. And really, maybe even just sort of like help close out games. I think she could play a role from an important starter, scoring 15 points a game, or she could just be someone who's there to get them a bucket when they need it and add 5 points off the bench. But whatever she does, she's going to make an impact.
Yeah, and Team USA has so much talent. I definitely see what you're saying about not sure who's going to start because there's just so many great options.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got Kalia Copper, Jackie Young, Kelsey Plum. And everyone's in form in the WNBA, and Cheryl Reeve has a lot of decisions to make about who's going to start. And I'm sure Jewell would love to start, but she will commit to whatever role she is given.
And then, before we move on, one of my favorite tidbits was related to what Jewell Loyd is excited about. So what did she say she was most excited, or one of the things she was excited about related to the Olympics?
Yeah, it was really fascinating what she had to say about that. What she seemed to be most excited about was the opportunity to spend time with other top athletes. She mentioned getting to know the USA men's basketball team quite a lot at the last Olympics, and how she really gets to be surrounded by other players who are at the very top of their game. She mentioned that it's kind of easy to forget that you're like the 1%. And honestly, if you're at I feel like the WNBA is the 1%. If you're at the Olympics, it's like the 0.01%. You're really like, there's very few other people who have the level of talent that you have. And so she loves to just get to know those people who have similar experiences, who know what it's like to be the best and to work really, really hard to continue to be the best. And also just talk basketball on another level of people who really, understand it to the same degree that you do.
And, we have to talk about Ezi Magbegor, who signed a 1-year contract extension. What has she provided so far this season and in her first few years in Seattle? And what does it mean to the Storm to have her sticking around for one more year in 2025?
I think it means a ton to have Ezi Magbegor stick around for one more year. Obviously, it's expected that players will opt out of the current CBA at the end of the season. And after 2025, there will be a new CBA and higher salaries. So not many players are signing beyond 2025. So the fact that she, is still committing to stay around one more year, I think it says a lot about what she thinks about the organization and wanting to stay with the organization past 2025, even if the contract doesn't technically go past then. I think it's really important because Ezi will be such a important contributor if this current iteration of the Storm is going to win a championship, but she's also an all-star player that you can continue to build a roster around. As absolutely amazing as Nneka and Skylar and Jewell are, they are older players. We don't totally know how much longer they're going to play. Obviously, there's a range even within there, but Ezi's only 24. She has so much left to give, so much left to learn, so many more seasons to play. And so to create a good relationship early on with that player and want her to stay there and be able to build around her in the future, I think is huge. In terms of what she brings on the court, you have to talk about her defense. She is leading the league in blocks per game. She's 6th in the league in rebounds per game. She normally blocks about 3 shots a game, and they're impressive blocks. They are not small blocks. She is fully extended, and she is swatting the ball out of there. But she's a really great defender, and she really anchors Seattle's defense right now. She fixes a lot of their mistakes, is what Skylar talked about, is that, you know, they're going to guard their assignment, but they know that if their assignment gets past them, Ezi's going to be there to stuff the shot. She really is also improved her vocalness on the defensive end and sort of leading from the back and, you know, telling her teammates what she sees from her position at the anchor in the defense and being more comfortable calling out schemes. And, you know, Noelle Quinn is a very, very defensive minded coach. She wants everything to start with defense. And so to have such a talented defensive player on your team is super important to that. And then also she's gotten better offensively every single year. She's, you know, added a really solid 3-point shot. She's gotten better handles. She will, you know, grab a rebound and take it all the way down to the other end and score a basket. She's, you know, she's got great athleticism for a 6'4" player, and she really has just improved the myriad of ways she can score, and I think she'll only continue to get better.
Well, coming up next, we'll chat about what's ahead for the Storm and more. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. It's so important to have quality candidates to interview, and LinkedIn Jobs makes it so easy to find them. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So Bella, looking ahead, what areas do you think the Storm need to improve on to reach the next level for them this season?
I think the biggest thing is just consistency. I think we've seen quite a bit of improvement through their, you know, first 10, 11, 12 games. And now it's, you know, as that chemistry continues to build, it's a matter of making sure that chemistry and the effort on the court is consistent. I think Noelle Quinn talks a lot about the 50-50 balls, and that's certainly an area she wants her team to improve on, is really putting in the effort to get those balls. And it really actually frustrates her more than anything else when her team doesn't try to get those 50-50 balls, because it's a question of effort, right? Like, anyone can get those 50-50 balls, and it's a question of who wants it more. And I think games where they've been successful, like against Dallas, you can see them going for those 50-50 balls and really putting in that effort and trying to get those deflections and do whatever they can. And it's a matter of putting that together for 4 quarters and every game. You know, especially at the beginning of the season, they would come out kind of flat. And I think as that chemistry continues to build, it's just having both the effort and the communication be there consistently, so that they are playing that well consistently and not, you know, having quarters where the other team outscores them by 10 points all of a sudden or something like that.
And then, are there any players you think are poised for a breakout in the next few weeks or so?
Yeah, I think Jordan Horston has been really good to start the season and is going to continue to be very good. She had to start a lot last year as a rookie, and it was difficult for her. I think she did well, but she was, you know, not particularly efficient from the floor. And she was also dealing with a shoulder injury. She got shoulder surgery in the off season. So she's a lot healthier now. I think she put in a ton of work in the off season. She spent a month in Chicago living with Jewell Loyd, learning how she trains, learning how she gets better. She worked on her shot. She missed a lot of bunnies at the rim last year. That has not been the case this year. She's really, she's gotten better at slowing down and figuring things out. And, her first responsibility on this team is defense. Noelle Quinn loves her defense more than anything. She has incredible length, incredible activity, incredibly athletic, but she's also really smart. She'll get in the passing lanes, and when she slows down enough, because I think that's sometimes her issue, is she's just going a little bit too fast. She got called for a lot of travels last season because of that, or she just sort of doesn't slow down enough before she goes for the layup. But she's a really smart player, and when she's locked in, she can get great assists. We saw one against LA where she forced a turnover and sent a touchdown pass to Nneka, and Nneka got a buzzer beater to end the third quarter. And it was, I think she's a really, really talented player, and we're starting to see her shot be more efficient and her really grow into her role and her talents. Because of hard work. She really worked on it, and I think she's going to continue to work hard. And under the tutelage of players like Jewell Loyd and Nneka Ogwumike, she's another player where really the sky's the limit for her if she continues to work hard.
And what are you looking for or excited to see in the next month or so between now and the Olympic break?
I think probably be very interested to see how the chemistry continues to develop. I think we've seen quite a lot of it develop already this season, but I think there's still so much more of a season to play, and there's still so much that they can get used to together before, hoping to make it to a WNBA Finals series. So how they continue to figure out where their teammates want the ball on the floor, and how they continue to communicate on the court, particularly defensively, because they like to do a lot of traps. They like to be very aggressive on the defensive end, and that only works if you're communicating with each other and everyone knows where they're going. Otherwise, your trap isn't closing fast enough, and suddenly someone has an open layup. So I think I'm really interested to see just how their chemistry and communication continues to develop as they get more time to play together.
And then one question that I always like to ask, it's a little self-serving, but also for our listeners, what Storm games do you have circled on your calendar that our listeners and myself should also make sure they're watching?
I think there's a couple. On Sunday would be the soonest one. They're going to play Phoenix again. They beat Phoenix pretty handily in the preseason and in the Commissioner's Cup, but Brittany Griner is back, and Seattle have struggled with players who are 6'7" and taller and very strong. So I think it'll be really interesting to see how they handle Phoenix with BG back. Another huge one, June 23rd, Connecticut is coming to Seattle. Obviously, Connecticut have one loss on the season. They have been terrific. I think how Seattle performs against them will be a huge measuring stick for them in terms of how they handle particularly their defensive pressure, because they have been, especially as the chemistry develops, defenses have been able to frustrate them. So how they perform against Connecticut will be huge. Another big one, July 12th, will be their last chance to take on the Lynx. They have gone 0-3 against the Lynx. We know the Lynx have been good, but it has been rough for Seattle. And will be another chance to see if they can kind of figure it out, if they can, beat this team and make it to the finals. And then, looking after the Olympic break a little bit further away, they've got to play the New York Liberty twice. When they played the Liberty, they were without Nneka Ogwumike, and I think it'll be really interesting to see, again, sort of that measuring stick of how they're playing against one of the best teams in the league.
Yeah, and then last question, really difficult one. What are you working on now or looking forward to writing soon in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned Jordan Horston. I am working on sort of talking about her improvement in her sophomore season in the WNBA, and just the effort she puts in, and really the spark that she provides this veteran team off the bench. Another one that's probably coming a little bit sooner is a story about Victoria Vivians. She's consistently been starting at the 3 for Seattle. And I think, not just me, it's also her teammates who think she's kind of underrated. People don't necessarily talk about her a lot, and she gives a lot to this team defensively, and knocks down open threes and does what she needs to do without taking attention away from the stars. And I think she's a really interesting player. I hope people will be excited to read about.
I'm excited to read about her whenever that comes out. Well, thank you for joining me today, Bella. Where can the listeners find you online?
Yes, you can find me at Munson_Bella on Twitter or at _Bella Munson on Instagram.
And thanks to our listeners for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. And make sure to tune in tomorrow to hear from our WNBA draft crew.